video games are for nerds. But that doesn't mean we can't talk about them. That's why you're listening to The Week in Gaming, the only gaming podcast that breaks down the last 7 days and tears games apart from the inside. Ugh. So forget your worries, open your ears, and join Simon Miller and a co-host for the entertainment chatter you need. Also, screw Dark Souls.
Hello and welcome to the Week in Gaming podcast, which I'm sure if you've worked out, if you've never listened before, is a podcast about gaming. However, very special edition today, and one I've been excited about over the last few weeks. And this actually ties in as well. Usually I just use it as promotional tools. This is true. One of the ways I'm able to do all these podcasts is thanks to patreon.com/SimonMiller316. Everyone knows what Patreon is. These are all my personal projects. I've got to make some money from them, otherwise I can't free up the time to do them. And the man that we have on today got in touch after listening to a recent episode of The Week in Gaming where both Sam and I were like, I don't know about Kingdom Hearts 3. I'm sure it's really good, but who knows? And he said, bro, man, let me come on your podcast. I will absolutely sell you on the idea. And I thought this was wonderful. And so he did sign up for the Patreon, which makes him a double hero. But right now, all the way from America, we do have my man JR. First and foremost, JR, how are you doing today?
Just like Kingdom Hearts, everything is chaos and way more complicated than it needs to be. I think this is a great way to start off.
Well, this is good already. Well, I want to thank you because you got in touch and you said, look, I'm a huge fan. Let me basically sell you on the franchise, because I wouldn't say that, you know, we were disparaging about it, but I bet we were ignorant, because when you don't know about something, you kind of do fob them off, because it's kind of like, well, we need to mention it in passing, given that it's a podcast about games. And Kingdom Hearts 3 is obviously a massive release because there's been so many people waiting for it, and the delays, and at one point people didn't even know what the release date was, and now boom, here it is. Everybody's jumped on the bandwagon. So what we're going to do today is, man, is I'm going to, again, I'm turning this over to you. You're going to run me through it. We're going to start at the original. We're going to try and figure out what makes it so good. Hopefully a nice love-in if you're already a Kingdom Hearts fan. But more importantly, if you're like me, hopefully we get to the end of this and we could all understand a little bit better. And who knows, maybe even dip our toe in the water. So, look, to start, man, you tell me where the getting off point is. And we're about to go on a wonderful, and given that it is Disney, very colourful, very colourful journey through this video game franchise.
Very colourful, yeah.
So you go, man. I mean, to me, the thing I always found astonishing is that Disney and, you know, a company like Square Enix could even get this off the ground. I think we said this. I think trying to do it today would be harder, given that Disney's kind of, you know, fought back from where they were. They're much bigger. They feel like a much bigger company than they did a couple of years ago.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I do want to say, like, it's totally fine to be disparaging. Well, not even disparaging. You guys weren't that disparaging of the Kingdom Hearts series, but you were very much like, I don't know. And from the outside, this series is very much weird creation. And I think part of the appeal, at least to me personally, is that this is kind of a series that should not exist.
Yeah, I totally get that. Totally. It makes no sense.
Yeah, like if you put like just the description of this on a whiteboard and you looked at it, well, obviously it's the ramblings of a crazy person. But that kind of lends the beauty to it. And I mean, I don't know whether or not starting this series now would be possible or not, because I mean, the whole thing, or at least came out. The first game came out in 2002. So, you know, Disney was still a worldwide brand then, and Square Enix, I think Final Fantasy X had just come out, which is one of the more acclaimed Final Fantasy games.
Yeah.
And at least from what I've kind of heard on the internet is Tetsuya Nomura, the kind of auteur behind this madness, was in an elevator with some Disney execs and just kind of pitched him, hey, why don't we do a Disney game for you? And originally, it was going to star Mickey Mouse, basically traveling through all of these Disney worlds. And Disney was a little reticent about that, so they kind of backed off, created a whole new main character who, if you look at like the early sketches, is similar-ish to what we have now, but basically he was a lion boy, like almost like a furry, with a chainsaw sword. So obviously that Disney was not okay with chainsaws, and so they went with a giant key.
Amazing. That's amazing. So basically they wanted to make it Gears of War, and somebody went, no, you can't. You can't do that. That's a bad decision.
Yeah, you can't have Mickey or this little kid like chainsawing through a bunch of monsters in Disney World. Like that just wouldn't play.
I do love that the change was, just make it a giant key. That looks a bit like a chainsaw. That's Disney enough. That does make a lot of sense, dude, because I think I did play a bit of the original Final Fantasy, because I played Kingdom Hearts, because I played Final Fantasy X, and it felt like, that'll be interesting. And the concept is great on paper, but I didn't get into it enough to ever sort of figure it out, especially the stuff behind the scenes. So that actually does make sense why it would be a giant keyblade, because I was like, why a key? Like, I just thought it was some weird Final Fantasy stuff that I'd missed. But that's great, man. What a great sort of, evolution from an idea in a lift to maybe pushing the boundaries too far, and then obviously being Disney, a huge company being brought back in.
Yeah, and I do think, especially for me and kind of people around my generation, is that like I think Kingdom Hearts did come out at like this perfectly beautiful time, because like 2012, 2002, I was 12 years old. And I remember I was still watching the Disney Channel a lot at that point, and they were promoting the hell out of this weird new game, Kingdom Hearts. And like I still remember being like a little kid and just being like, oh, I like Final Fantasy. I like Disney stuff. Like, why not? This seems like peanut butter and chocolate. Like, it looks amazing. So I felt like I needed to try it out. And so when you pick it up, and so when I finally got my hands on the game and played it, although, and we'll get into this a lot more, the story of Kingdom Hearts is absolutely ridiculous, silly, barely makes sense. But I think where Kingdom Hearts really shines is the character moments. Because I feel like if you talk to any sort of Kingdom Hearts fan, if they tell you the story makes sense, they're lying, first of all. But in the small moments between, especially our main character Sora and Donald, Goofy, and all of the other kind of side characters, and even the different Disney characters that he interacts with, like especially Winnie the Pooh. Almost every game has a weird section where you go into a storybook and basically play a bunch of mini games with Winnie the Pooh, and it touches your heart in just like the weird kind of like only way like a childhood thing could kind of get to you. So I think getting into it when I was still 12 years old, like really helped just lock this game into my consciousness forever. So yeah.
That's quite the selling point as well. Like, it's all, you get it a lot in video, or you get it in anything where there's a passion, any kind of hobby. You get it in wrestling and music and films. Maybe more so in games and wrestling, just because they've kind of embraced the internet. Kind of evolved together, those two things.
Yeah.
But games especially, you do get people going, oh yeah, what a bunch of crap, just because they don't understand it. But it is great to hear, like you say, you're a massive Kingdom Hearts fan, but you can absolutely acknowledge both its positives and negatives, but the fact that overall it comes together to form this absolutely bizarre and eclectic game.
Yeah, and also I do think I would say I love it because the story and plot are so kind of madness all over the place. Like, as I was playing Kingdom Hearts 3, there were several times where I just had to put the controller down and laugh for a good 10 minutes because something just so weird and out of nowhere happened to the characters, and I'm like, it makes a weird sense, but it also doesn't. And yeah, you just kind of love it for its oddness, weirdness, quirkiness. But yeah.
Okay, so you're sold on it because, like you say, you're 12 and you're loving the Disney Channel, and obviously Final Fantasy's got a huge name.
Yep.
How does it develop and how does it evolve from there? Not just for you as a gamer, but in terms of the franchise, because I know we're on Kingdom Hearts 3, but I also know there is an absolute ton of spin-offs. And there's that one with that huge name like Remux, Redux, whatever the hell it is. I don't think anybody... I'm sure when they were making it, Square Enix felt like, I think we have something here. Because we are taking two properties that have huge fan bases, and while the connection may be stilted, you never... when you're starting on that foundation, there's absolutely going to be some interest. But how do you go from that to, and I really do mean this, even I, like I say, as someone that would not call themselves a fan by any stretch of the imagination, I could see the excitement for Kingdom Hearts 3. Yeah. And I was at EGX last year over in the UK, and I was working with Square Enix. That was obviously, 6 to 8 months before it came out. But even then, that's what everybody wanted to play. That's what the queue was for. That was... that was kind of the buzz around the place. People asking about it. They wanted to know more information. And, people were dressed up like Kingdom Hearts characters. It had an impact. But how do you go from an idea in a lift to this? I mean, that's a long answer, but, give me the kind of the basics.
Well, I think... Well, first of all, to kind of jump back a second and address the name thing that you brought up, I'm not sure which one you're even talking about because they all have long, crazy names. And secondly, there is part of it that I do think is more translation, not issue, but I think some of these names make more sense in Japanese than they do over here using English, like stuff like Birth by Sleep and Dream Drop Distance and Final Chapter Prologue and all of the they're all weird names that don't make any sense, but I do think not that they're more common terms in Japanese, but I think they probably sound a bit better in Japanese, so I do cut them a little bit of slack there.
Yeah, fair enough.
And then I also think why there was so much hype. Well, I think a big reason why there was so much hype for Kingdom Hearts 3 is we have not had a first released on console Kingdom Hearts game since 2005.
Yeah, which is a long time.
Yes, it's a very, very long time. I mean, every other game has come out on a different portable console. Some of them have been either web-based or on your phones. And the thing that is both kind of awesome and intensely frustrating about Kingdom Hearts is that there really is no throwaway game. Each one kind of develops the story in a different way. Each one you almost have to play to get especially Kingdom. Like that was one of the things that blew me away with Kingdom Hearts 3 is that they literally tied in every single game. Even I think Recoded is probably the most throwaway, but even that, they managed to kind of tie in a lot of the specific villains and stuff to that in this game. And I was just like, what? We're fucking bringing back bug blocks, weird virus things. So yeah.
But I kind of like that though, because I mean, absolutely bizarre sort of reference to make. I was always a big fan of Seinfeld, and what I always loved about Seinfeld.
We could talk about that forever too.
Well, we'll do one. We'll do a podcast. But what I always loved about Seinfeld was it was just, despite the huge success that it got and the, I don't know, however millions it had before they called a day on it, it was really inaccessible in the sense it was like, well, look, if you haven't watched earlier episodes and you don't get our joke, well, that's just your fault. It's like it never bent over, and that was kind of a double-edged sword because I mean the thing with Seinfeld was it was still funny in and of itself. Like you didn't need to know the jokes; there'd be other jokes they would introduce, but it absolutely lent towards its fan base, and I truly believe that's why it got some of the success that it did, because it felt like not only do you have to put some effort in, and obviously if you put effort in, you'll always get more out. But it felt like you were part of a special club. And as you've just said, when they are putting in even these tiny enemies that you can't believe are making a return, there will be something inside of you that goes, well, at least I've put in my time and effort, and now I understand where we're going. I don't feel left out. Whereas if you just stumbled across it, you may be like, what is this nonsense?
Yeah, it's like the secret handshake of a club almost.
100% like that. Yeah, 100% like that.
So I feel like we've talked around it. Do you want me to actually go into the story of this all?
Absolutely, man. Because I'm going to appreciate that anyway. Because I mean, I haven't played all the Final Fantasy games, but I played sort of the ones you're meant to play. And even if someone said to me, "What's the story?" I don't know. So it'd actually be lovely to for a spin-off of it to actually understand what's going on. It'll be the first time I think ever with a Square Enix game that I actually get the plot.
Yeah, those. I mean, that's like I said. That's one of the reasons I love Square Enix is because you almost have to read the Wikipedia page afterwards to be like, oh, that's what was going on there. Okay, that makes sense.
To be fair, though, it's not. It's I would say it's a flaw of many games. Like if I've played all the Halos. If someone said to me, explain Halo, I'd be like, I don't want to. Like, can you just can you go read an internet or something? Because I don't know where to begin, and it's too convoluted and over the top. So I think it is for me, it probably ties into that. This is a quick tangent, but it probably ties into the fact that video games can go on for 50 hours plus, and it's not like a movie that has to be all said and done 2 to 3 hours. So you have to try. You can go crazy. Look at Hideo Kojima, right? So I do understand why games do this. I don't think it's a criticism by any stretch of the imagination. You just have to like the gameplay enough that you're happy to put the effort in to understand everything else.
Oh yeah, and especially with Kingdom Hearts, there is no other game that I feel plays like this. I feel like this is the closest you get to like really playing out those over the top cutscenes that you see in most of the other Final Fantasy games. Because the like action system is all very, especially as it's gone over, like it's kind of clunky in the first few games. But as they've gone on, like Kingdom Hearts 3 really felt like everything has come together, not only story-wise, but like gameplay-wise as well, that you're just doing all of these like crazy over-the-top combos, and they're not like Street Fighter 2 impossible to like mash all the buttons at the exact right time to get them off. Like they're fairly simple to like do these giant over-the-top moves where fireballs are flying everywhere and you're throwing 20 different keys at people, and it all just looks amazing. So nothing really plays like Kingdom Hearts, and I think that is another reason why like people just absolutely love it.
Absolutely. But so let's get into the story. How do we start?
Okay.
Why are Disney characters hanging out with Final Fantasy characters? And from there, I mean, I presume it's going to be some sort of hilarious accident, but from there, why do we have Goofy and, I don't know, whoever else, Donald Duck running around trying to save the world?
Okay, so at the start of Kingdom Hearts, we do have this main character of Sora, who is your typical kind of like young adult hero. If you've watched anime at all, you've probably seen about half a dozen of these types of heroes, who's just your kind of all-around good guy who spends his days hanging out on a beach with his friends. I mean, at the very start of Kingdom Hearts 1, you're trying to put together a raft so that you and your two friends, Riku and Kairi, can kind of set sail off on adventures. And it's probably good that everything kind of goes to hell at this point, because 3 like 12-year-olds on a raft just out in the middle of the ocean would probably die. So it's good that pretty much darkness takes over their entire world. These giant monsters start popping up everywhere, and they get flung across the universe.
Right. Okay. So nice and Japanese at the moment. I've heard and seen it many times before. What people forget is as well, it's basically the plot of every Zelda game too. But somehow everyone seems to have forgotten that Zelda is super Japanese, just because I guess it broke through. It kind of broke through into the mainstream, right? So everyone just treats it as this huge AAA game. But when you take it back and look at kind of the structure of the narrative, you're like, this is the most Japanese story ever, which is great, and I love it, but that's just totally forgotten. So we've all seen it, we've all done it.
And and I will say, like, the Final Fantasy, you've already met some Final Fantasy characters on Destiny Island, which is what their home is called. So, obviously just your normal run-of-the-mill name, but like some of their friends are Tidus and Waka from Final Fantasy X and Selphie from Final Fantasy VIII, and they'll kind of help train you in like the basic fighting mechanics. Like for the first part of the game, you have a little wooden sword that you're kind of going around, and one night as you go back to the island, and your good friend Riku, who is going to be our kind of rival throughout this first game, is very fascinated by the darkness and tries to get Sora to come with him. And Kairi, like, unfortunately, a lot of female characters in games just kind of disappears, and you have to hunt her down now. Which is one of the flaws of Kingdom Hearts that I can't apologize for. Not a lot of female characters, but I feel like that's kind of a video games wide problem as well.
Yes, no, I would agree, and it's absolutely something that needs to be addressed, and thankfully it's slowly happening, but they're just, I mean, it's twofold, isn't it? A, they're taking their time, but B, and this is no excuse, I think it's just observing it for what it is, because Kingdom Hearts started in 2002, it's wrapped up. It's always going to be wrapped up from where it began, isn't it? And in 2002, you had nothing like that, which was anyway. The less said about that, the better. But yes, you're 100% right.
And so, after his entire world falls to darkness, he obtains the Keyblade, which is his giant key that he will use for the remainder of the series. And also, like a lot of Japanese series, in this first game, everyone marvels at the Keyblade, how awesome the Keyblade is and how powerful the Keyblade is. And by Kingdom Hearts 3, pretty much everyone has one. So when you played the original, everyone is like, oh, this weapon of legend. And by the end, they're just handing them out to pretty much every side character they have. So
there's more than one Keyblade?
Yes.
I did not know that. How do they justify the second one?
So
that's pretty. Your silence sums it up. It's like, well, they just did. They just did.
So I'll kind of get to that.
Okay, you keep going. You keep going. Yes, I derailed you.
We'll see a second Keyblade at the end of Kingdom Hearts 1. So,
okay.
So the tutorial level's over. Destiny Islands falls to darkness, and Sora wakes up in this place called Traverse Town, which is kind of the island of misfit Final Fantasy characters is probably the best way to describe it. Because you meet Squall Leonhart from Final Fantasy VIII, Yuffie and Aerith from Final Fantasy VII, and you also run into Donald and Goofy, who have been set off on a mission by their king, Mickey, although throughout the entire first game, they just refer to him as the king. But
I can already see this is Disney, forcing their will. What we'd like to do is just call Mickey the king. That would be great.
It's just the king. And I also think they were somewhat holding back in this first game because they weren't sure exactly where this was going to go. I mean, they did originally approach them with a giant chainsaw sword. So they're like, you can play around with Donald and Goofy as much as you want, but let's not throw Mickey too much into this yet. And so in Traverse Town, you kind of learn that there are all these different worlds out there that you can travel to, and one by one, they're falling into darkness. And you kind of get sent off on this mission to not only find your two friends who disappeared off into the wild, but also the king, and also find out why everything is basically going to hell.
Right. Okay.
And then through the course of the game, you go to a bunch of Disney worlds. Like the two you start out with are Alice in Wonderland, which is trippy fun, and Hercules, which has a giant Colosseum battle where you just battle. I didn't even introduce the main villains, the Heartless.
Right. Okay. That's fine. That makes sense. Ticks a box.
Yep. So the Heartless are basically what happens when a heart falls to darkness. They become these weird little darkness creatures that you have to defeat and free the people's heart from them. And of course, there's like bajillions of them on every world, and they're fun to smash in the face with the giant key. So and the stronger your heart is when you fall to darkness, the stronger the Heartless is that will kind of take your place, which is why you have these giant boss battles when a particular heart falls to darkness. And so, you go to you go to Wonderland, you go to the Olympus Coliseum from Hercules, you go to the jungle from Tarzan, you get swallowed by Monstro the whale from Pinocchio, Atlantica from The Little Mermaid, Captain Hook's pirate ship, and I think that's all of them. I'm probably missing some,
but that's got to be cool straight away, because I imagine 50% of the people that are jumping into this are massive Disney fans, and you've mentioned Little Mermaid and Captain Hook, and all kind of things that people, because it's not just a Peter Pan world. It's Disney's Peter Pan world. And that is so, I mean, as cheesy as it may sound, and I know some people really hate Disney. Disney, do, they do make an impression on you very early on, and it will always hit that. It will always hit your nostalgia glands, and it will always get you smiling and reminiscing, and that's why they do as well as they do. And some people think they exploit that. Yeah, cool, but loads of people do. So I imagine straight away you're like, this is just fantastic.
Oh yeah, and what's really amazing is because it is Disney producing it. If you look at just the cast list on IMDb of this game, like you have huge. Well, first of all, like Haley Joel Osment, like fresh off of The Sixth Sense, is your main character.
Oh, that's amazing, yeah.
And he's stuck with this series. Like he still did the same role in Kingdom Hearts 3, despite not looking like the same little kid that he was.
Yeah.
And then you look at the cast, like for a lot of these Disney movies, they get the original cast back. Like the woman that did Alice in Wonderland was Alice in Wonderland in Kingdom Hearts, even after all these years. Like when I forget when Disney's Alice in Wonderland came out, but that was like back in the 60s? 70s maybe?
I mean, I you know what, let's look at, I mean, it's old, right? You can tell by the animation.
Yeah, and I also know like it was big in like the psychedelic culture, which is why like I'm reaching for 60s or 70s.
Yeah, 1951. 1951. Like again, you forget how long they've been smashing this stuff.
Yeah. And so to get a lot of those original voice actors and actresses back is just nuts. Like a lot of the Peter Pan they got back. And then also like you look at some of the other actors that got to do like the voice characters. Like I think Billy Zane is the villain, I believe. I think Lance Bass was also another villain. In one of the later games, Leonard Nimoy is
Brilliant.
One of the. Yeah, it's nuts. So it's great to have Disney there to basically be like, yeah, get whatever actors you want. Here's the pocketbook, like go crazy.
Here's not only the way you access them, but here's a bunch of cash. Like
Yes.
Yeah, brilliant, absolutely brilliant. But they should do that, shouldn't they? They should absolutely be doing that because that's the whole point. Like if you've got the access and you can make these things happen, you should. Because I imagine that the fan base, so this is a lot I imagine, but it's true, quote unquote, I imagine a lot of people that play it go, I hope this happens and I hope that happens. And if it doesn't, I don't ever think you'd be disappointed. But when it does happen, it probably taps into something inside of you. You're like, yes, this is the kind of stuff that I wanted to see.
Yeah. And then, so yeah, as you're going through all of these different Disney worlds, you start finding out that a lot of the Disney villains, led by Maleficent from Sleeping Beauty, have been conspiring together to kind of take what are known as the 7 Princesses of Hearts, which are the 7 strongest hearts in all of the universe, and use them to open up the doorway to Kingdom Hearts.
Right, okay, right.
So over the course of the game, like you see, it starts off in Alice in Wonderland where Alice disappears, and then also Agrabah, Aladdin. That was one I forgot. Jasmine also gets taken away by your friend Riku, who you find out it has been kind of working with Maleficent and being led deeper into the darkness. So, of course, now you have like some real stakes because your best friend is getting like corrupted by these Disney villains. And you want to be like, no, come back to the light. Like, be awesome with me, Donald and Goofy. But of course, like, you remember these are all 12-year-olds basically. And he's like, oh no, my friend Sora has these new friends, Donald and Goofy. I'm going to go be more of a little shit with Maleficent. And so that kind of puts a nice, stakes within the matter as you go forward, and eventually you get led to this place called Hollow Bastion, which will become big throughout the rest of the series, where Maleficent has gathered these 7 princesses of heart, with one of whom is your other friend Kairi. So everything ties together nicely.
Right. Okay.
Or weirdly, but
yeah. So that's basically your foundations, right? That's kind of your getting off point. So how the hell do you make that last for as many games as they did? I'm getting ahead of myself here, but
well, I'm still on the first game.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah.
So this is the first game, and this is kind of where the swerve happens, basically. And this is what will then kind of fall out into all the rest of the games, is once you get to Hollow Bastions and Riku falls deeper and deeper into darkness, literally like black fire kind of like emanates from him, and his voice starts changing. It starts being less like I think the voice actor's name is David Gallagher. He was in that Seventh Heaven show.
Right.
And more like Billy Zane, the bad guy of the thing. And you find out that the big bad isn't Maleficent, who also gets the nice dragon transition, and you fight that, which is awesome, but is actually this character called Ansem, who has been possessing your friend Riku, and who himself has been trying to open Kingdom Hearts. And he is the Heartless of this character that we'll kind of meet later on. And you finally, like after a giant battle between him and Sora and Riku that has about 50 different forms, because this is also kind of a Final Fantasy game, and every final boss needs to have at least like 3 different transformations.
Of course it does.
One of which is a giant ship that you're just flying around and whacking with your key, which is a lot of fun. And so you finally defeat him. He bursts into smoke, and you're finally on this small piece of land in like a giant sea of darkness, and you finally see Kairi again. And there's a nice little reunion, and then you see the giant doors to Kingdom Hearts. We're never 100% sure exactly what Kingdom Hearts is.
Just a place.
Throughout the entire series, we just know it's the MacGuffin. It's the thing we're always after, or at least trying to stop the villains from getting at. And so the giant doorway, we see that not only is it Kingdom Hearts, but it's also a gateway to the world of darkness. And that's where we finally see King Mickey show up with his second Keyblade.
Right.
And so King Mickey and Riku close the door to darkness from the side of darkness, while Sora and Kairi, Donald, and Goofy push the door close from the land of light. And by doing that, basically put everything back into order, and all the worlds start to split apart again, and everything kind of goes back to peace, except for the fact that even though Sora managed to get Kairi back to Destiny Island, he himself, along with Donald, Goofy, and Pluto, for some reason, Pluto just magically shows up everywhere. By the way, like whenever they need like you to, just go over in that random direction, Pluto will pop up and just kind of run in that direction, and you'll chase after him.
Well, look, whatever works, right? Whatever works.
Yeah, exactly. And so you're Sora, Donald, and Goofy then have to wander the crossroads, and that's basically how Kingdom Hearts 1 comes to a conclusion.
Right, okay. I mean, that's kind of cool. I'm going, this is an obvious question, an obvious answer as well, but because there's just no way that Disney would allow it to be anything else. But I'm assuming throughout all of this, Mickey is the focus of all good, and that he is the most wonderful, benevolent, awesome person in the world.
Actually...
No way.
Well, okay, here's the thing. There's no... Mickey is never the bad guy. You're never worried that Mickey is going to find... But there is a couple of prequel games where you do come across Mickey as not a like fuck up, but you can tell he's still learning his way. Like he's not the god character that he almost becomes in a weird way, but he when we do get into Birth by Sleep, which is another craziness, you do see him kind of like learning the ropes as a Keyblade wielder and still trying to become a Keyblade master. I kind of liken it to Obi-Wan Kenobi in a weird way.
Okay, yep, that makes sense.
Like there's a decent amount of Star Wars parallels throughout Kingdom Hearts, with the Keyblade wielders kind of being the Jedi. So you do see kind of prequels Obi-Wan Kenobi, where he's trying to figure out the ropes and probably doesn't give the best advice to some people in the series, but he's never a bad guy. He is always trying to do good. He's just not always the benevolent character you would think he would be.
Okay, that's cool. I like that. I like that there's a bit of shades of grey. Nothing wrong with that at all. I just presumed that they hold him in such high esteem. Obviously, I mean, he is literally, as you said, the king of that whole Disney empire. They wouldn't even let anybody muck around with it. But that's good to hear. That makes it far more interesting to me.
Yeah, and yeah, so I guess from there we get into the first spin-off game, which was called Chain of Memories.
Yeah, I think. Why do I know that one? Man, I think I was probably working at some kind of outlet that did loads on it, I'd imagine. But Chain of Memories feels like it's etched into my skin, even though I know nothing about it whatsoever.
So it originally came out for the Game Boy Advanced in 2004.
Right.
But I think where a lot of people played it was when it got re-released in 2007 as Chain of Memories.
Right, it probably has something to do with that, yeah.
Where it was released on PS2.
Right, okay.
And I will say, I love the story for Chain of Memories, but I hate with a fiery passion the gameplay in Chain of Memories. Because at the start of it, Sora and Donald and Goofy are walking along through this giant field with like a few dirt paths through it. And they come across this giant, bizarre-looking castle, which we'll find out later is called Castle Oblivion, which has a ton of weird magical properties that we'll probably get to later on. But basically, the idea is that as you go through this castle, you start to lose part of yourself, your memories, which not only kind of express themselves in the different rooms and levels and floors that you go through. Like basically you go through each of the Disney worlds that you did in the previous game, but with a slightly different story and a mechanic that's based around cards.
Right.
So all of your memories get expressed through different cards. And these can be attack cards, magic cards, room cards, or floor cards. And if you think about how difficult it would be to manage an entire deck of cards while doing real-time action, it's not fun, because you're trying to manage, like, okay, not only do I need to throw out a higher card than the enemies are throwing out, but you also need to then kind of pick and choose like different combination of cards to get the right like special attacks and special moves. And so it goes from being incredibly frustrating and annoying to, once you have enough cards and a big enough deck, you can pretty much order the deck to such a way that it's just breaks the game, and you just like mash triangle over and over again and use super moves. And it's gameplay wise, it's probably the most frustrating game.
That sounds like it's just been hampered by the console that it was on, right? Like Game Boy Advance, they probably thought we have to come up with a different way to go forward with this. So, so that, we can only do so much. Game Boy Advance was brilliant, but it wasn't like a technological powerhouse.
Yeah. And I think it was definitely that. And also this was one of the things where, I think they came up with the idea first, like, oh, how cool would it be to have cards as memories, and then kind of put together a battle system with it afterwards.
Yeah.
So I think they kind of put the cart before the horse for this one.
Right, okay.
But yeah, so then as we progress through the castle and we go through all of these worlds again, we start meeting these mysterious guys in black leather cloaks who are members of this, what's known as Organization 13. And we're not entirely certain what they're doing in Chain of Memories, but we know they're looking for something in the castle, and B, they're also trying to fuck with Sora's memories.
Right.
because as you go through, Sora is always talking about like how he needs to find his friends, how he's looking for Riku and Kairi, and eventually we run into a replica version of Riku, basically a Riku clone that the organization has created by stealing some of Sora's memories, and are trying to figure out a way to create people and create hearts. And then there's this blonde girl, Naminé, who we find out is the one sort of controlling all of these memories. And throughout the game, Sora slowly stops saying he needs to find Kairi, and he needs to start finding Naminé. So obviously, it's crazy. And finally, we get to the end of the game where we finally confront Naminé, who it turns out was good all along, and who, for some weird reason that we'll find out later, looks exactly like Kairi, but with blonde hair. And so Naminé tells Sora that she can fix all of his memories, but he has to go to sleep, and he will basically forget everything that happened within Castle Oblivion, but wake up with all of his memories restored as they should be.
Right. I'm quite impressed, though, that there was that much of a... usually with a game that comes out on the Game Boy Advance, that I guess you could argue is a spin-off, they don't usually introduce things like that into it. Usually it's just like, we're just kind of the same old thing. But that actually sounds like you said, if you missed it, you've kind of missed out on a big chunk of what they're trying to get across. Oh,
totally. Yeah, like I said, there's really no unimportant games. Like each thing really does kind of progress something forward or add something to the mythology of it all. And so if you did just basically go from Kingdom Hearts 1 to Kingdom Hearts 2, there is very much a kind of like, well, what the fuck is going on here now?
That's amazing. That is so unlike most games.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of the things that, like, I think kind of hooked me in with the series, because I got it on Game Boy Advance. I don't know if I ever finished it on Game Boy Advance, to be honest, but it introduced you to these bad guys that are going to be with us entirely going forward with the organization. It introduced the idea of these replica bodies, which will become very important in Kingdom Hearts 3. And it half introduced the concept of nobodies with Naminé, which is basically if a person with a strong enough heart becomes a heartless, their body will then become what is called a nobody. Because, yeah. Which is basically the main enemies you will be fighting throughout Kingdom Hearts 2.
Right. Okay, right. It ties into that. Jeez, my knees.
And we're still like within like the first, like this is still before it's gone totally batshit. Like this is still like you can follow this, I think.
Yeah.
And so also within Chain of Memories, there is a second storyline that you unlock after you beat Sora's, where you play as Riku, who wakes up in the very bottom basement of Castle Oblivion. And so where Sora was fighting his way up to the top, Riku is basically just fighting his way out of the basement. And part of it takes place kind of concurrently with Sora's story. And then it kind of goes a bit further where Riku confronts Naminé and sees Sora asleep in this giant egg-shaped pod. And it's all about him kind of confronting his own darkness and eventually defeating the Ansem that still lurks within his heart.
Right. Makes sense. That's what we've all gone
Does
through.
It? But okay. So, just before we start Kingdom Hearts 2, there was a small section in Kingdom Hearts 1 where Sora used his own Keyblade to unlock Kairi's heart, which was in So Kairi's heart was in Sora all along during Kingdom Hearts 1, because it's got to be touching like that. And so there's a part where he unlocks both hearts to kind of restore Kairi in a great moment of self-sacrifice, and he becomes a Heartless for a little while. And then when he meets back up with Kairi at the bottom of Hollow Bastion, Kairi restores him back to Sora.
Right.
Which is very important because that means Sora now has a nobody who we start the game as in Kingdom Hearts 2, which is completely out of nowhere and totally bizarre. And he's this character known as Roxas. And one of the things about nobodies is basically they are your original name, all scrambled up, but with an X slotted in.
All right. I can't imagine what people must have thought when they sat down to play this. They just finished the first Kingdom Hearts and got to it. They must have been baffled.
Yeah, they are. And you start in this place, Twilight Town, that that was only briefly mentioned in Chain of Memories. You start playing as this character Roxas, who you've never seen before, and there are these weird interludes with the actor Christopher Lee basically talking about trying to restore Sora's memories. So you get there's some connection, but you don't really know what it is until the whole like kind of tutorial of Twilight Town is over, and you find out that they have basically Riku and this character Diz, D-I-Z, where both the D and the Z are capitalized because sure. And they have basically been using this guy Roxas, which we'll later find out is Sora's nobody, to kind of give Sora back his memories while working with Naminé. And eventually Sora wakes up in this weird mansion and finally starts on his real journey throughout Kingdom Hearts 2.
Okay, and what is that? Once you sort of get the preamble out the way, what do you then segue into in terms of the overall narrative for that?
So the overall narrative for that is you go through a bunch more Disney World, some that you've been to before, like you go back to Neverland, but like there's also new ones like Mulan.
Well, I was going to say that's the big thing with each release, right? It's like what new franchises or Disney franchises are they going to work in? What worlds are we going to get? What characters are we going to see? Yeah.
And there's a lot that like you repeat. Like I'm pretty sure every game has Olympus in it, because that's usually a great way to just kind of include a small like tournament section where you can just kind of fight a bunch of enemies all at once. But yeah, so quickly as you get into Kingdom Hearts 2, you start meeting more members of this organization 13. There's 13 of them, and you find out that Roxas, or as nobody, was number 13. And so you're trying to kind of piece together what these nobodies are doing, try to stop them from corrupting different hearts at each venture. And as you get towards the end and you kind of come to the organization's big home base in the world that never was, you find out that they have basically been punking you the entire game, forcing you to defeat Heartless, and then capturing the hearts you release to kind of try and put them all together to a giant Kingdom Hearts.
My word. So this just completely goes off the rails.
Yeah, and if you actually get into playing Kingdom Hearts 2, and I do recommend if you do want to play these series, thankfully Square Enix has re-released all of these games onto both the PS3 and PS4.
Right, that makes more sense. I remember when they did it, yeah.
Yep. And I think like you can get them, like all the games, including Kingdom Hearts 3, is like one nice package now. But yeah, basically everything goes crazy in like that final level because Riku shows back up. He now has a Keyblade. Kairi's there as well, and she's fighting different Heartless off. One of the organization members, Axel, who is this cool red-haired guy with fire powers, has turned sides and is helping you fight off the Heartless. And it turns out the big bad in this one is the Nobody, that is connected to Ansem, the villain of the first game, who were both the Nobody of this character known as Xehanort.
The names alone are hard to remember.
Yeah, they really are crazy. Honestly, if it wasn't for the fact that this series does really excel with character, I probably wouldn't be able to remember half of the names, if that. But thankfully, like, each of the characters are kind of very unique. They have their own quirks and personalities because it's Square Enix. They all have like very different looks. So each of them, like, you can almost tell just by their outline almost. But yeah, and it turns out that character that I was talking before, Diz, is actually the real Ansem the Wise, who Xehanort was one of his pupils, who kind of turned on him and started creating Heartless and Nobodies and generally wreaking havoc throughout the entire universe. And so finally at the end of Kingdom Hearts 2, you have this great battle sequence where you and Riku finally like truly battle together against this huge Nobody called Xemnas, who was Xehanort's Nobody. And at the end of it, all of the organization members have been defeated. And oh no, I might have lost the plot now.
I'm not surprised, dude. It's absolutely insane.
Mm-hmm. And then, so finally you get some peace where Sora, Riku, and Kairi finally get to go back to Destiny Island and have at least a couple of months just generally hanging out and being kids again. King Mickey also shows up to help out in the final battle, and him and Goofy and Donald go back to Queen Minnie and Duchess Daisy. Go back to like the Disney home world. We also meet a character called Yen Sid, who I don't know if you ever saw the Sorcerer's Apprentice short with Mickey. And all of the brooms and stuff, but the wizard from that is this character Yen Sid, who used to be a Keyblade master but is now just kind of training these different characters that we play throughout the game. And yeah, that's kind of the madness that is Kingdom Hearts 2. And there's probably a lot I've left out because there's so much of these games, and
that's all good, man. I think it's one of those things. Eventually, you just have to go and stop because otherwise. Okay, so. When did that come out? 2005, did you say, Kingdom Hearts 2?
Yeah, 2000. That came out in 2005, also for the PlayStation 2. And after that, except for the re-release of Chain of Memories and eventually the 1.5 and 2.5 remixes that kind of repackaged all the games, we will not have another main console release until this year with Kingdom Hearts 3.
Right. So why did it take 14 years?
So one of the things that is both great and frustrating about Nomura is that he's always said that he has so many different stories for this series, and a lot of them are kind of side stories. So we have Coded, which I believe originally came out for mobile phones in Japan and was eventually re-released also in America as Recoded on, I believe, the DS, which was basically another thing I forgot. Jiminy Cricket is traveling with you throughout this as well.
I'm sold straight away. I love Jiminy Cricket. There's a great character right there.
And he is kind of your note taker. He's so in each game you get a little journal which basically keeps track of all the worlds you've been to, all the characters you've met, all of the enemies you've fought, and basically any sort of little note taking that you would need to do in the game kind of gets saved here, like how well you did on each of the different mini games, what happened in each world if you want to take a quick refresher. So Jiminy's keeps all of these different journals for each of the games. And so during Chain of Memories, because Sora lost all his memories, Jiminy's notebook also went completely blank.
Okay. I wasn't expecting that at all.
Yeah. And the only thing that was still left over in the journal was thank Naminé, which kind of, ties back to Chain of Memories and creates a nice little through line. And lets Sora know that, hey, there was this character Naminé. You're going to be searching for her later on down the line in the series. Because she's Kairi's nobody. And both Naminé and Roxas kind of fuse back with Sora and Kairi at the end of Kingdom Hearts 2. And there's this beautiful little section where like Sora and Kairi are finally holding hands, and there's like two shadows behind them that look like Naminé and Roxas that are also holding hands, and it's just really cute, and it gives you the butterflies, and you're just like, aw.
That's great.
Yeah, so Coded, Mickey, Donald, Goofy, and Jiminy take the journal to Chip and Dale, who are basically two mad scientists that work within the Disney Kingdom. And they decide to upload the entire journal into a computer, because that's how that works. And basically, it's another way to kind of replay through a lot of the worlds that you've been to before. And you find out that there are these things called bug blocks, which have been added in there for some reason and been corrupting all these memories. And you play through as a digital version of Sora, fighting all like a bunch of enemies again, and these weird kind of cyberpunky looking Heartless with like cool neon color schemes. Excuse me. And towards the end of the game, like you find out that Maleficent is still around as well, and she is now looking for something called the Book of Prophecies, which we'll come to later. And then on top of that, we also got 358 over 2 days, which is just one of the craziest titles ever. But you basically play the story of Roxas in his time in the organization and him developing a friendship with Axel and really getting deeper backstories of each of the 13 different organization members, some of whom you find out who they were before they became nobodies, some you don't find out at all, and they get kind of shrouded in mystery. And you meet this 14th member who was another replica named Xion, who basically starts to capture Sora's heart from Roxas and becomes her own kind of weird person who you then have to defeat at the end of that game. And so, yeah, you get all of these weird little side stories through these side games that Nomura felt like he just really needed to tell. And I guess I don't know why he felt the need to kind of put 3 on hold for so long and tell all of these side stories, but that's kind of what happened.
All right, so that is the reason. It's not like it was stuck in development or anything. He just was so intrigued to go off on all these sort of like random directions. That's what he did.
Yeah. And also, I do think because you see a lot of this, especially mechanic-wise, the jump between Kingdom Hearts 1 and Kingdom Hearts 2 is huge. Like Kingdom Hearts 1, you're pretty much just whacking people with a key and occasionally throwing out like fire and ice balls and casting cure. It's kind of basic, and occasionally you'll get a moment where you see like a cool action prompt. And then Kingdom Hearts 2 kind of steps it up a whole nother level where you have like different kinds of like special attacks. You get to do like combination attacks with either Goofy and his giant shield or Donald and all of his different magics. Oh yeah, by the way, Donald is the chief mage of the kingdom, by the way.
Right, okay.
And Goofy's the head knight. So yeah. Any questions so far before
I mean, so many questions. But if we went down that route, I think we'd be going on forever. Let's shift. I think you're going to do this anyway. Let's shift on to Kingdom Hearts 3. Okay. Why? Two things really. A, how does it tie into everything else? But also B, what was the kind of reaction from the Kingdom Hearts fan base? Because, after such I know there were these mini games coming out, but after such a big wait to sort of get a standalone release, I mean, were people happy? Were they not happy? I mean, kind of where does it fall now? Are we going to get more? Like, what's the deal with it?
I mean, so we're definitely getting more. One thing that was finally nice about Kingdom Hearts 3 is that it didn't draw the series to a close, because there's still a lot more going on. And if you ever want, I feel like the current mobile game, the like cell phone game, Unchained Union Cross X Key, is going to kind of be kind of sets up a lot of story bits about this giant Keyblade war where thousands of Keyblade wielders fought at one point to try and claim Kingdom Hearts, is going to be kind of the direction we're going in now. Like, we found out that there's even bigger bads than this Xehanort guy that we've been fighting over these 10 games. So yeah, we're on Kingdom Hearts 3, but it's really like the 10th game, which is crazy. And so yeah, the fan base reaction has been pretty positive, but there has been a lot of people still saying that like Kingdom Hearts 2 is still the best of all the games. And I mean, personally, I think a lot of it is just like, we're all much older people now from 2005. Like, I mean, yes, I still consider a Kingdom Hearts game to be my favorite game of all time, but I don't know. I still think like Kingdom Hearts 3 was absolutely amazing, but you did get a lot of people going like, it's really amazing, or it's really amazing, I just wish they also included this. And I think there's also a part where this is the first Kingdom Hearts game where we're going to be really getting DLC.
Right, yeah, which is obviously always controversial because it's just the world we live in.
Yeah, but like not even that it's controversial, but that there is a bit where the game, like there's some stuff that like has been included in all the past games that are not included in this one.
Right. Like
there's no giant tournament in Olympus this time around. There's only 3 levels in difficulty instead of the usual like 4 or 5. And then also Tetsuya Nomura himself has also come out and said there will be story additionally in the DLC. And he said that there's probably going to be one more game between Kingdom Hearts 3 and Kingdom Hearts 4, which he has kind of confirmed will be a thing at some point somewhere down the line. God knows when.
Well, yeah, could be another 10 years.
Well, I mean, I've always been saying, like, it's been 14 years since Kingdom Hearts 2, so I've been waiting for this game for 14 years. So,
did it live up to your expectations, though? Are you happy with it?
I'm happy. I'm happy as a clam. I understand a lot of people sort of like butts and but mostly I really loved it. I think we finally reached a point where like this is kind of the Kingdom Hearts that he's always wanted to make. Just the crazy over the top moves that you can do. The fact that when you went to the CG worlds like Frozen and Tangled and Big Hero 6, it looked exactly like those movies. Like, it didn't look like the Kingdom Hearts version. It looked like it was Sora just in those movies now. The fact that all the dialogue is spoken aloud instead of like occasionally needing to cut away to like chat boxes that you had to read.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I really do think like this is the kind of Kingdom Hearts game he wanted to be making all along, which I think is part of the reason it's taken this long. Is A, the man has like 50 other projects that he's been working on, and B, I think like we needed to get here technically, like machine wise, like just to be able to show something like this on consoles. But
so, I mean, I think we have to look to wrap it up in a second. We're gonna have to get you back on, dude, because there's so much more I want to talk about. But just,
I mean, I'll just say here, we haven't even gotten to the truly crazy stuff yet.
Well, that's what I thought. But as long as you're happy to come back on, we'll absolutely have to get you back on. But just to kind of wrap this one up, I don't say where do we go from here, because that sounds a bit much. But how do you go about wrapping this up? I don't mean in terms of story, but going down the line. I mean, clearly you can't have a game that releases a new sort of proper entry in the series every 14 years, because it's going to go on forever. But from what you know and how the game finishes and how it all ties together, and even with DLC, what's kind of the short to midterm future of Kingdom Hearts? That would be my big roundup question, and then we'll get you back on to talk about the crazy stuff, because I have so many questions anyway that we're going to have to jump into it. There's just no two ways about it.
Yeah. I kind of had a feeling this was going to happen, but just because this whole thing is so dense, which is another reason why like this series feels like a thing that shouldn't be, is because of like a premise that started out with, hey, let's just add Final Fantasy and Disney, that we've gotten like a rich mythology that is almost more complicated than stuff like Game of Thrones.
Absolutely, without a doubt. I could have explained Game of Thrones in half an hour tops if I needed to.
Yeah, whereas this, like, I feel like we need like a 10-part series, maybe just one on each game. But anyway, to kind of wrap it up, to go back to your question of where do we go from here, I think it's twofold. I think one is the DLC that's going to be coming out, because one thing that a lot of the entries in the series have done is after the first one comes out, and usually these won't be released in America, but they'll release what's known as a final mix version, which adds a couple of secret bosses, which adds some extra Heartless, which adds some extra cutscenes. So I think we're going to kind of get what would be Kingdom Hearts 3 final mix through these DLCs. So, and he said he wants to try and finish the development of each of these by the end of the year. So I think we're going to get a decent amount of DLC for this game, which will be fun. I think story-wise, he's going to rely on the cell phone mobile game, Kingdom Hearts Unchained Key Union Cross, crazy nameness.
Of course.
Because they have that game is, there was already a prequel game, Birth by Sleep, that took place like 10 years before the first, I think about 10 years before the Kingdom Hearts 1. But this takes place like thousands of years before Kingdom Hearts 1.
Jeez, man.
And has been setting up all of these new characters and villains who kind of show up in a lot of the post-credit stuff of 3. And so I think since we've put a nice little button onto the Xehanort Saga, or the Dark Seeker Saga, which is what Nomura has been calling it, we are now going to get somehow a much bigger and even crazier batch of games out of this. So like he said, there is another side game he wants to do before 4. So I think once Kingdom Hearts 3 DLC has all wrapped up, we'll get something on maybe the Switch, because that's the closest thing to a portable console we still have now.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's true, yeah.
Because, was it the Vita that PlayStation just finished off? Said that they're done with?
Yeah, they're not making any more. Yeah, it's all said and
done. So unless, like, he wants to make another cell phone mobile game like Union Cross is now, I would say, maybe something on the Switch, or maybe another like cell phone game. By the way, don't bother with the cell phone game. It's
How many times have I heard that?
The mechanics are shit, and the story is. I mean, I love the story because it's insane, but yeah. So I would say the future is probably a couple of side games, and then eventually we'll start hearing about Kingdom Hearts 4.
Wow, dude, unbelievable. I mean, when we started this over an hour ago, I didn't even, I thought it'd be like an hour. I didn't realize there'd be this much depth. I was genuinely fascinated by it, because it goes to show that, Kingdom Hearts isn't sort of the biggest franchise or series in the world. Like, it's not Call of Duty or anything like that. And yet there's incredible lore, and clearly, good people like yourself that have incredibly got into it. I find that fascinating. I really do. It goes to show how awesome games can be without even realizing.
And honestly, with a couple of like recent games that have been like really talked about, but kind of have met like underwhelming reactions. Like, I think a lot of the issues with a lot of modern games, at least what I have with a lot of modern games, is that they don't really make you feel for the main characters. Like, that was one of the biggest reasons I just didn't bother with Anthem at all, was because like they didn't give me any characters. Where with Kingdom Hearts, like Sora is almost always front and center, and you care about him. You care about Roxas, Kairi, Riku. Like I said, like if you want to go back and like really experience a game that cares about its characters, and even though it puts them through absolute shit, like you want to see them succeed at the end and like be happy and finally, like, I don't know, get back to just being kids on an island, like playing in the sand. That's what Kingdom Hearts is kind of all about.
Dude, that is one right. I'm going to round it up there because that's just a wonderful ending point. However, we are going to do a part 2. Even if we talk in a minute and say you don't want to, I'm going to twist your arm into it. Which, and I will say at this point, I understand the contradiction in terms. So I think I'm going to call this something like, Kingdom Hearts the only podcast you need, or something like that. And it's going to be part 1, which makes no sense because how can there be part 2? However, I always said I keep these podcasts around an hour. I don't want to break my rules, even though I could keep talking about this all day. So what we'll do is we'll draw a line under it here. I'm not even going to give a proper ending. We're just going to stop talking in a second. And now everyone, obviously, if it's not up, I don't think I'll put them up at the same time. But to continue on this ridiculous journey into Kingdom Hearts, look out for part 2, which me and JR will go sort out time to record now, and it will get up. But I will say, JR, thank you very much for your time and for your intellect on this matter. It's fascinating. It's a world I didn't even know existed, apart from a name here and there.
I mean, dude, I absolutely love like all the podcasts and YouTube stuff you do. So to be able to like, talk with you about something that I love so much, like Kingdom Hearts, man, this has just been a pleasure. And yeah, anytime you want to do part 2, I am totally up for it, because this has been an absolute blast, man.
It's very kind. You're very kind. Right, so I'm just going to literally, the podcast is just going to end. It's like a cliffhanger when part 2's not up. But obviously, if part 2 is there, please go listen to it now. And JR and I will continue on this conversation.